Thank
Thank you, Lord. Here, and we thank you for joining us. I am thrilled. I'm going to delve into the program immediately because we're just a tad bit late, and I don't want you to miss anything. Because I have a very special guest today, and you know what? Before the program and even the commercial break, fun part of it, because that's when if anything can happen, it will happen. And I was telling Dr. Sweeney before we went on the air, we were having a little engineering chat before going on the air. I was saying, man, the enemy really does not want you to be on the air today because of some technical difficulties. It does not, I've been doing this for over 30 years. One of the things that you realize, you don't panic. You just find out, where it is, and then you deal with it and you keep going. I don't care if you're ABC, NBC, Fox, CNN. I don't care if you're the World News Network. If it is built by man, you're going to have some issues. As Christians, the journey is not going to be easy. I think sometimes the reason that a lot of folk come in the front door and the door is because we've painted a picture that Jesus Christ, all of your problems are going to go away. All of your situations are going to go away, and everything is going to be just peaches and cream. Quite the opposite. That's when the enemy is really going to sharpen his fangs because he wants to humiliate humiliate you, and by humiliating you, then he humiliates the kingdom of God. And if you can prevent him from humiliating you, then you can prevent him from humiliating the kingdom of God, because we are the ambassadors of Christ. I am thrilled to be joined on today's episode of Defining Moments by my friend, Dr. Adrienne Sweeney. Most recently, to include her very depth, deep body work at the United, that's UConn, and former Women's Leader board member. Dr. Sweeney's professional story began as the first African American athletic trainer at Mississippi State University, and she has after 7 years in athletic training and a brief stint at basketball. Dr. Sweeney found her calling in administration, where she has spent a remarkable career adapting, assessing, adjusting her impact. After my time with Dr. Sweeney on today's episode, you too will be encouraged, inspired, and even challenged with the value in transferable skill sets, the importance of perfecting your gift, how to create impact, how to shatter the glass ceiling in your prospective industry, and also learn the genius and humility of when looking down at others. You only do so to find out where they are. You lend them a hand and you pull them up. Ladies and gentlemen, I am delighted to have my friend, the newly minted, I guess about a couple months ago, I referred to her as Miss Sweeney or Adrienne, but now she is the newly minted Dr. Adrienne Sweeney. Welcome to Defining Moments.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for accepting the invitation. When I talked with Dr. Sweeney a couple of days ago, she called me back to return a phone call for us to talk about some things. And I said, "Hey, Dr. Sweeney." And she paused, and I said, "You forgot who you are?" And she said, "I got to get used to that." I said, "It is not given, it is earned." So I am delighted to have you. Listen, you've done a lot to be a young lady.
Maybe so.
Yeah, yeah. And you've done some things that only others can dream of doing, from starting out, in a small rural state like Mississippi, and working your way all the way up, sitting in a leveraged seat at one of the most prestigious universities in the country, University of Connecticut, UConn.
Yeah.
And of course, you didn't wake up with a silver spoon. It's been a journey.
It is a journey for sure. God's
Yeah.
blessings and favor have followed me, and He's led me and guided me along my journey to be able to some awesome experiences and to make an awesome impact in the places I've been.
It's been a delightful pleasure to meet you and to talk with you, a person with your resume. And I got to tell you, it's unfortunate, but I know some arrogant people because of their work and because of the title behind their name. It's almost like they want you to kiss they want you to kiss their ring. But you are so approachable and you're so humble, almost like, is there such thing as being too humble? I'll never forget, I learned this lesson from a friend of mine, Demario Davis, who plays football with the New Orleans Saints. Someone asked him, "Man, you're great at what you do." He said, "Me being a professional football player, that's my job. That's not who I am."
Yeah.
So even though people try to esteem you to these great accomplishments, it seems as though, Dr. Sweeney, you're not fazed about it at all.
No, I just see who I am and what I do a part of my calling and a reflection of who I am in Christ and why He created me. And it ultimately, at the end of the day, it's not about me. It's about Him. It's about glorifying Him. And the Bible says, if you exalt God, lift Him up, then He will make sure we get whatever He desires that we are to have. So it's not about me.
Yeah, that's kind of.
When I wake up, it's not about me.
Yeah, that's kind of the Matthew 6:33. Seek ye first the kingdom of righteousness and things. If you, all things should be added to you. In fact, if you're concerned, I tell people, and I have to remind myself that if you're concerned about the things of God, then God will be concerned about what you desire. And really what you desire is legitimate, which desire is to understand the desires of God, then he will.
God is about drawing people to Him. It's not about drawing people. So every day God gives me an opportunity to get up and to be me, to create me to be. It's the opportunity for me to shine for His glory and to help draw people to Him. So the humility and the humbleness comes from understanding the assignment. The assignment is not to puff myself up or to be proud or arrogant, because people are typically turned off by that, and I'm trying to help draw people to Him. So,
And you know what? I think sometimes we find ourselves, we get in trouble with God. Some innocently, some on purpose, because we turn people into idols. We turn people into deity. And so, even though I'm very proud of you, I recognize you for your work. You get to fight back and to push back on that. Dr. John Perkins been on the program a couple of times.
okay.
He's been on a program, man. I have so much respect for him. And I shall never forget it. One day I was bragging on all of the books. He's like 13 or 18 honorary doctor degrees. He's written several books. He speak at corporate settings, Fortune 500 settings. And I was talking about him one day. He said, "Larry, I know you mean me well." He said, but don't go too strong on that, because I still have the propensity to sin.
Yeah.
And so yeah, he exactly right. And I think sometimes we become crushed when we see people that we've elevated make mistakes, when in fact we've misplaced our allegiance. Rather than it being in God, our allegiance has been placed in man. So you didn't get to UConn overnight. You didn't get to this. You didn't get to, you didn't become Dr. Adrian Sweeney overnight. I think there are people out there, and you and I shared before the program, that there are people out there who've just given up. They're angry at God. They're mad at God. They've tried. They have failed. They've tried. They've failed. It seems that the years are passing them by. They're getting older. They're getting more frustrated. It seems that everybody is winning but them. Everybody is accomplishing but them, and they're just angry. Like, well, it's past my turn, and I just feel like giving up. So I have resorted to substance abuse, not necessarily, a coping, things. It doesn't necessarily have to be drugs. It doesn't have alcohol. It could be womanizing. It could be workaholic. That's your coping mechanism. And I say this: anything or anyone that you put before God is an idol.
Yeah.
So I know you didn't get here overnight. I know that there have been weary times, particularly, and we had a conversation before with you being in a position at UConn, a which is a demanding position.
Mhm.
You started out as a little baby girl. I'd like for you to share your testimony.
Born and raised in Jackson, Mississippi. Proud product of Jackson Public School District. I grew up in a home where my parents instilled in us the value of education. They divorced when I was about 7 or 8 years old. I grew up in sports. I grew up on the campus of Jackson State University, and just have a heart for God. I'm never going to come back in a minute, and I'll finish sharing.
You're good at this, ladies and gentlemen. Stay tuned. I'm with my friend Dr. Adrian Sweeney on Defining Moments. Thank you for joining us today. I appreciate those of you that are tuning us in via live stream. It appears, Jacob, that we have a little hollow sound. I don't know what that is, but thank you for joining us. Much better. Thank you for joining us. You were sharing your story, because people look at you now and they say, "Oh, we have a tendency to idolize and to celebrate people based upon what we perceive as their celebrity or their arrival, and we miss out the journey." I look at you and you have a smile on your face and you're a very pleasant person, but figuratively speaking, I'm sure you have a lot of calluses on your knees and on your elbows, and a lot of tissue that you've had to throw away as a result of crying in your pillow, being wet with tears, because you, like others, have said, "God, is this for me? Where are you?" And it's really okay. And so you share that you were a prophet Jackson Public School in
Yes. great things come out of Jackson Public School. Then, now, and hopefully even more so in the future. And I think that's up to us to make sure that happens. But yeah, it definitely was a journey. It is a journey. I don't view life as one conglomerate experience. I view it as a series of experiences or chapters, and they each have their own defining moments, and they each have their challenges. They have their ups. They have their downs. I say to people a lot of times, they say it's amazing what you've accomplished, and I, simply say, if you only knew the story behind the journey, and maybe one day I'll write a book. Maybe one day I'll share.
I told you in another setting. I said you're gonna write a book.
Yeah, maybe I'll share a story about the journey. But there are just so many things that I had to learn along the way, and I think I learned many things. I would say the hard way, and I don't mean the hard way as me being hard in corporate America. In the work culture, there are many things that minorities don't have exposure to, and exposure changes the game for individuals. And so there were things that God simply had to teach me one-on-one, that nobody mentored me or was willing to reach down and teach me. And so learning the hard way, I'm now empowered to mentor others, to help them navigate pitfalls, that they don't have to take those pitfalls, and help them to win in a way that, even though I won, to make their journey and their road to the trophy a little easier.
I want to ask you a question when we come back in the segment. Does the journey have to be hard? Does it have to be challenging? Does it equate? Welcome back to Defining Moments. I'm with my guest, Dr. Adrienne Sweeney. She said, and I agree, that most folk, it's an illusion, by the way. And to get to a place to say, number one, I got here by myself, they're lying. Everybody got to where they are, if there is any appreciable success, because somebody helped you, period. Or number two, it was an easy journey, they're lying. All right. I think sometimes we create this illusion to make people think that it's okay. But I have learned, Dr. Sweeney, it's okay to fail on your way. And it is almost, and I'll go so far as to say that God allowed it to happen for life's lessons. Yep. And we're supposed to share it because it makes us more dependent on God and less dependent on our ingenuity. Yeah. And so when people look at Dr. Sweeney, you're young, but yet you held a prestigious position at UConn, but they don't know the journey. So if you want big fish, do you have to fish in deep water? If you want small fish, do you stay in shallow water? That's the reality of life.
I say no matter what you want, you have to be willing to submit to God's plan, His development plan for you. Because what
His development plan
for you might not be what He chooses for someone else. That's the danger of comparison in life. I don't think human beings were meant to be compared. I think we're meant to be loved. We're meant to be appreciated. We're meant to be valued. And it's okay to look at someone else and pat them on the back and celebrate them and appreciate them. But to compare yourself to them when they aren't the mold which you were created can become a dangerous place. So I think ultimately, in seeking to be whoever you want to be or desire to become, you have to submit to God's development plan and understand that might not look like what it looks like for everybody. Because certainly my journey was unique. It was my own. It doesn't look like what other people who've achieved similar feats in their it doesn't look the same for them. And so you have to have the courage to be authentic, to be unique, to be different, to not mind if your journey looks different, if your journey seems harder. We talked a little bit in the break about the journey was rough. It was hard. There were tears. There were moments when I felt like giving up. But now today, as I look back, I endured those tears and those hard moments. And it's like a day that you don't want to go. But going makes all the difference in the world towards you accomplishing your goals. So yeah, there were days when I didn't want to do it. But ultimately, I continued to do it because I know that my life has meaning and great impact for others. So it was about service. It was about leadership. It wasn't about Adrian. Even me deciding to go to UConn because I was in a very comfortable place at the University of North Carolina, Wilmington. I just bought a house, but I knew I had to go. I knew God was coming out of my comfort zone to go there. And it was about the opportunities that I can create, the doors that I can open, the people that I can help, the things that I could learn, and experiences that I could get in that environment. It was part of my development plan.
But so let's start now, and then we'll work our way back. Tell exactly your position. What is the responsibility, the job description of CEO in your position at UConn? Because were you the first African American female to hold that position?
I'm not certain. I never asked. I don't know
Mhm.
the history.
Mhm.
So I know that there was a female that preceded me in that position. Beth, she did a wonderful job and went on to become an athletic director. But it's running day-to-day operations of the department. That is everything that is UConn athletics for our internal operations and a few of our external units. It was running it. I had academics reporting to me. I had compliance.
Well, let me say this. So I say this with the greatest degree of respect. All right, but I think you understand my personality to know why I'm crafting it like this. A little black girl from Mississippi. The people look at us, unfortunately, some, not all.
Yeah.
You're the last, you're the worst of everything. Mississippi is. You're the backwards of everything. Do you guys still wear shoes down there? Can you congregate the sentence down there? And now you're heading a major department in one of the leading universities in the country.
Yeah.
Was that intimidating to you, or not? Not necessarily you, but other folk.
I do think it can be intimidating to some people. A lot of times when I would come in the room, people would make an assumption that I oversaw academics or held some other position in the department, and I would have to say, no, I'm the chief operating officer. I run day-to-day operations of the department. I oversaw $80 million budget. We had multiple facilities projects in the works. I oversaw a large staff of people and had to make sure that when something broke in the department that it got fixed. My job was to protect the athletic director from having to spend his time on menial things or things that didn't rise to the level of his executive leadership being needed. And no day was the same. There was never a dull moment. It required me to be what I love to do, a problem solver, a consensus builder, and a servant leader. And that's what I was able to go there and engage in, just becoming a better servant leader and investing in people and learning the business at the highest level, as you say.
Did you have to fight? And I'm not making any assumption. Did you have to fight preconceived and ideas and systemic prejudices, not necessarily within the university, but just in the community, being African American female? And what do you do that? Now, the reason why I ask that question is because Defining Moment is very honest. We're very honest, we're transparent, and the objective is to encourage people. The objective is to challenge people. The objective is to challenge people to embrace their purpose and to be real with them. It'd be easy. The enemy is going to fight every step of the way, but you're on God's side. Not that God is on your side, but you're on God's side.
If I can be candid with you, I faced it everywhere I went. I faced some of those same systemic barriers and prejudices at HBCUs like I faced at a PWI. And so sometimes we have our own. Some of my best advocates came out of a PWI environment. Some of the people who chose to invest in, they didn't look like. And some of my challenges in my career, some of my greatest challenges came in my career came at the hand of somebody that didn't look like me. And so I think as children of God, to simply relegate to the color of a person's skin, it really comes back down to the nature of a person's heart, how they treat you. And so you can have good hearts and you can have bad hearts or distorted hearts or hurting hearts. Like a person could be hurting you because they're hurting and they don't even realize
like hurt people.
So you have to realize, no matter who they are, no matter what those systemic barriers or cultures or things that you have faced, that God has equipped you to be able to face them, to be able to handle them, and hopefully to be able to have a positive impact on the very person who's inflicting pain in your life.
So those So there are those that are watching right now, all right, that are saying, but Adrian, so many doors have been closed. I've been turned down. I was the most qualified, or I'm in this position, but I am only in this position because of a mandate, because of a quota mandate, but I've not been given the authority. Or there people have been, and people that are closest to me. It's like Job. I've always said, Job had friends. They were good. Their intentions were initially good, but they did one thing. They stayed silent for a couple of days, but they did one thing wrong, and they started talking because they started looking at Job and say, "Well, you're in this situation because you must have done something wrong." They should have just been quiet. To say, "I don't know why what's happening is happening, but I'm just going to pray for you." They start judging him. The man at the pool of Bethesda was there for a long time on the pallet. And Jesus came up and said, "What?" He said, "Well, everybody's just jumping in." He always had the finger pointing at somebody else. For those that have faced barriers and are facing barriers, have been betrayed by people closest to them, all right? And that's where the pain comes in, like Job's wife. You know, she was closest to him. That's the greatest betrayal. Rather than motivating and encouraging, she said, "Yeah, I'm tired of you. Just curse God and die." And so she became his adversary just in her speech. What would you tell people? How would you encourage people? Stay focused, even if sometimes you feel like you're in the journey alone.
I would say maintain godly perspective, because typically when we get in those moments, our perspective has shifted gravely to our humanity, our humanness. We don't want to be hurt. Don't want life to be difficult. We don't want to endure pain, especially not at the hands of others or others that we love. But I will say to you, success, following God, trusting God is a process. And if you don't work out, if you want to be in shape and you don't work out, you don't go to the gym, you don't eat healthy, you don't these things, how could you expect that you are going to be prepared for whatever God is preparing you for? And when we can come to a place where we understand the things that we're doing are a part of the process. So it's not about the person, it's not about whether or not it's fair, it's not about any of those things. It's about, do I trust God?
So what you're saying, and we're going to talk about it when we go into a segment, you mean growing strong in the Lord is not an organic process. You've got to participate in the working out process.
Absolutely.
Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. I'm with my friend, Dr. Adrian Sweeney, on Defining Moments. You said something earlier. You said you've got to trust God's developmental plan for you. I'm on a shifting plan for my life. It's a lifestyle plan. It's not a diet. But in this lifestyle plan, I've reduced my weight by 10 pounds. I'm going to reduce it by 10 more pounds. I'm working with a trainer, and he is taking me. He and she are taking me through some rigorous steps. It doesn't feel good.
Nope.
This morning, I didn't want to work out. All right, I didn't feel like working out, but I like the results.
Yeah.
All right. So what you're saying, that if you want the results that you know that God has in your heart, it's not going to come through osmosis.
Yeah.
It's going to come because you got to participate in the developmental process.
Yeah. If you think about, I feel like God gives us, and I heard this in the sermon, God gives us a preview of the intended outcome. The preview is to help us hold the line during the process. Because if you can't see the outcome, you might back away from the process. So think about Jesus, knowing that he was going to have to endure the death of the cross, but he knew that the intended outcome and the benefit and the reward was going to be to sit again at the right hand of the Father and to save all of our lives. It made him able to hold the line for the time that he was here on earth. I think we tend to think like, oh, he was Jesus, he died on the cross. It hurt. It
Literally hurt.
Pain. He was betrayed by people he loved and was close to. He was able to hold the line because he had a preview and an understanding of his purpose. And so he held the line. And I think for us, if we spend enough time with God to get the preview, to understand what God is preparing us for or what the blessing is, then we can be able to maintain godly perspective and stay focused in the process.
Hold that thought. Welcome back to Defining Moments. If you can hold the line, then you understand what God is trying to do. In essence, that's one of the purposes of the written word of God. God say, I'm going to tell you what has happened, what's going on now, why it is going now, and what's going to happen in the future. So that when we see all of the chaos that's going on, a lot of folks are saying, the sky is falling. And the body of Christ should be not in an arrogant way, should be saying, I'm not surprised by this, because it's in the word. It's all spelled out. If you and if you're surprised and the sky's falling, then that means that you're not spending time with the Lord, or you're not in the word reading the storyline of what's going on. And so what you're basically saying is that in order for you to be able to sustain your strength and your courage and passion at the highest level of your profession at UConn, you had to stay grounded in the word of God, in the relationship with him.
And that's at UConn, that's in a relationship, that's in any area of your life, staying grounded and staying rooted. But I also say, stepping away from UConn and coming back home has just been enabled me to go through a season of healing and restoration, where I learned a greater value for authenticity. I learned a value for, if you can't meet God or be real with God, how can he touch an area when you're not even being real about the area? So this degree of authenticity, to embrace who you are and where you are, not to have this religious piety to act like you have it all together when you don't, but to go to God in genuine and authentic relationship and say, God, I'm struggling with this. God, this hurt me. God, I feel angry. God, I don't understand. For me, one of the defining moments, and even coming back home, was what preceded me coming back home, and that was the death of my father. And I was about to go into the hospital to have a surgery, a quadruple bypass, which was an emergency surgery. And I just remember being in the restroom at my grandmother's house, and I could hear God. I had just been praying that everything would go well, and I remember God saying, what if it doesn't turn out the way you wanted to turn out? Will you still trust me? And so for the entire process of 6 months of my dad being in the hospital, I had to learn how to trust God in a different way. I had to trust that if God wanted to heal my dad by doing it on earth, or whether he wanted to heal him by bringing him home to heaven with him, that he's sovereign, and I had to trust his plan. And when I got to the place in the hospital where I could let go, and I had a greater amount of peace, and I was able to enjoy being with my dad, whatever God decided for the rest of that time. And so it's just coming to a point of when you can learn how to trust God even when it's difficult. I mean, who can't trust God when things are great? Trust him through the most difficult moments. It prepares you for whatever God has next for you, because what God has for you is great. And so in order to get to that, he has to be able to trust you. And so that's part of the process of trusting him through difficult moments. It helps you to be prepared for what God has next for you. And so my entire perspective shifted in the hospital about the value of my work, the value of my experiences, the value and the priority on family. My whole being and way of thinking shifted in that hospital, to be in a position to be able to be obedient and walk away and come back home when God said come home.
And I'm afraid, and I have associates that I see every day, and they are so engrossed in their work and in their profession that their work and their profession has turned into their deity.
Yeah,
and their identity. They don't, and the tragedy is that they don't understand it. It's like that they are a gerbil on a wheel, and their identity is found in their position, or where they work, or who they work for. I'm reminded of a song. You shared with me about your father, and the title of the song is "What You Do for Christ Will Last." The words goes like this: You may build great cathedrals, large or small. You can build skyscrapers grand and tall. You may conquer all the failures of the past, but only what you do for Christ will last. Remember, only what you do for Christ will last. Remember, only what you do for Christ will last. Only what you do for him will be counted at the end. Only what you do for Christ will last. You may seek earthly power and fame. The world might be impressed by your great name. Soon the glorious of this life will all pass, but only what you do for Christ will last. Though your armies may control each hemisphere, and your orbits out in space causes men to cheer. Your scientific knowledge may be vast, but only what you do for Christ will last. Though your song and prayers are heard and praised by men, they are no meaning unless you've been born again. Sinners, heed these words. Don't let this harvest pass. Only what you do for Christ will last.
Yeah.
I have learned, and God has blessed me to experience tinkling cymbals and shining stuff. But at the end of the day, Dr. Sweeney, those things are hollow. Those things are luring. And if you're not careful, and if you're not grounded, the enemy will lure you in thinking that that is reality. And you will begin to justify, I need to do this because it's good. I sent out a blast this morning. It's what you're doing good, or is it God? They live past you. My goal for life is that when I die, when I put that my impression, Mike Espy said it this way several years ago when his Secretary of Culture, he said, I want to leave it better than I found it.
Yeah. Leave places better than you found them, for sure. It's one of the things I used to write in my resume, and basically my work philosophy was to leave places better than I found them. If I go back to the situation of my father passing away and me going back to UConn, I probably stayed about 5 months after that process, but it was experiencing two deaths. I experienced the death of my dad, something that I loved, someone who I loved that I had no control over. And now I was being faced with putting my career to death.
Because her, and put a comment there, because spoke to like, she went and asked to leave UConn. She voluntarily said, I gotta go.
Resigned. Yeah,
I gotta go because after UConn, I mean, it's greater, big, larger, AD of NCAA. I mean, it was there. You had the intellectual prowess, you had the business acumen, and all of a sudden you back up and say, everything that's shining is not gold.
It was coming to a point that I knew God was saying it's time to step away. And so I remember telling my boss at UConn, I said, I feel like I'm dealing with grieving two things. I'm grieving the loss of my dad. And this is after I told him I was going to step away. I'm also grieving the loss of a career, like a career that I've worked hard to build. It wasn't easy to get here. And I can just remember God prompting me and me thinking, but it's not my career. It was God's career. It was the career that he gave me. If he helped me build it, if he asked me to step away, I know he'll help me reveal whatever is next. I know that whatever he has coming down the line, he'll take care of that. I'll trust him. And so even though it was another loss that I had to,
and it's real.
Yeah.
And you had to work through it. You had to work through it.
I mean, it was
and it's like, oh girl, just have faith. God. No, that's insulting.
Hey, listen, when you got to sit there and think about, stepping away from 199,999 some change, like I didn't make peanuts, and I don't, share like my salary range to be proud or arrogant, but to just give the reality that was a hard decision to make, but obedience to God is more important in the moment, because he gave me that he could exponentially increase it.
Well, listen, I'm glad you said that because that lofty salary comes with lofty benefits, with trigger bonuses, I'm sure. So what do you tell people that say, Dr. Sweeney or Adrian, I feel some nudging at me. I kind of know what I really should be doing, but if I do this, I'm going to leave behind these benefits. And now, people are talking about a recession, inflation, possible depression. I mean, the propaganda's out there. How would you encourage people now?
Well, if you know it's God, God said that He would never leave you or forsake you. You have to be willing to take that step and leap of faith. I haven't missed a beat being back home. I still have my benefits. There's a thing called Cobra. Cobra is expensive, but God provides. He made a way for me to be able to maintain those benefits. I get up every day. I laugh. I love. I
Do you feel free?
live. I
Do you
enjoy
feel?
life. I
Yeah.
feel free. I feel healed. And continue to go through a healing process. I feel restored. This is the absolute best decision that I could have made, and it has benefits that I could have never imagined by just being willing to be obedient. I know I couldn't see what's next, and no, I didn't know what was going to be next, but I knew God was going to be God. So if I let God guide, I'll be okay.
You'll be okay. Stay tuned. Adrian Sweeney on Defining Moments. Someone said years ago, if we just let God be God,
Just let God.
then God will be God.
Yeah.
If we just let God be God, then God will be God. Who is God? The creator, the sustainer, the judge, the master of the universe, the one, the provider, the I am, don't get started
Redeemer.
now. We don't have church up in here. The redeemer, the forgiver, because people look at God, some people look at God as like the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain. If you mess up, I'm gonna clobber you over your head, and I can't wait till you mess up so I can send you to hell. First of all, God didn't send anybody to hell. If you go to hell, that's a choice you choose. And I have learned, and I'm learning even more because I'm developing as a stronger Christian. It's a sanctification process, meaning you don't get there and say I've arrived. It's a daily process.
And God is more concerned about the sin, not to beat us over the head, because He knows the implications of sin on our lives. He knows the hurt that it causes. He's more concerned about our well-being. He's not a taskmaster. His concern for sin is because He loves us and He doesn't want us to be hurt or negatively impacted by our own choices and decisions, or from the deception of the enemy. So even His attitude towards sin is still rooted in love, and it's rooted in concern for, because He wants the best for us. He didn't ask us not to do it to be mean. He asked us not to do it because He knows all, He sees all, He understands the consequences. It comes back to trust factor. You remember that show Fear Factor, where people did these things and they're just like things that most people would be afraid of? I think as Christians, we're in the game of trust factor. And what are you willing to trust God with? What are you willing to trust God for? That's life for us. And I think the more that we trust God, the more that He can trust us with.
And the Word of God says the wages of sin is death. Not just a physical death, but death is translated in one writing as separation, loss.
Yeah.
And God saying, I never intended for you to experience death. I didn't put death inside of you. That's why it is so painful. That's why it's such a grieving, because I didn't put this inside of you. The enemy put this inside of you as a result of life's choices. But my desire is, as you said, is not to beat you up, not to clobber you over your head, but it's to celebrate you and to grow you. God told Jeremiah to tell the children of Israel, you wandered in the wilderness for a long time, and it's been long enough. I'm going to bring you out. Why? Because I know the plans that I have for you, plans to prosper you, and not to harm you, but to give you a good end. I want to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that God has a plan for you, and that plan is to prosper you, no matter how painful it looks, no matter how long it takes. It's like, God, when are you going to show up? Well, He's showing up now, and He's strengthening you now, and He's preserving you now, and He's preparing you now. All right.
And He's with you now, always. That's one of the key things, is just knowing He's with you.
And that He said, I'll never leave you nor forsake you. And it's powerful, no matter what they say. Hold on. Welcome back to Defining Moments. Dr. Adrian Sweeney, so you left a very lucrative job, a lucrative path. You're encouraging people that, first of all, you got to know it's God.
Yeah.
But if God say move, then you need to move, even though it doesn't make sense to the natural mind. Because I understand the enemy is constantly fighting you. I don't know how many times, and I shared this before the program, I don't know how many times I've been offered opportunities in the last 10 years. You need to accept this, you need to, and some of the packages were very lucrative. And it looked, and they looked appealing. And a couple of them almost jumped. But I submitted myself to the Lord. I didn't.
Yeah.
That's you. Now you have to sustain it.
I think a lot of times, we rely on our human comprehension to try to process God. And it's dangerous because God tells us in his word, his thoughts are higher than our thoughts and his ways are higher than our ways. When it doesn't make sense, then we may assume it's God. And that might not be the case. There are times, yes, God gives a sermon, and sometimes when things don't make sense, that's him telling us, like, no, not me. But at the human level, it didn't make sense to walk away from the highest career aspiration, job, everything you've worked hard for. It didn't make sense to walk away from it in human comprehension. But in my heart, with an obedient heart, I knew it was God. And what he was asking me to do was going to require faith, and it was going to require me to trust him. And
so, how do you help people with the grieving process? Because and let's focus on career or dreams. Because God says, I tell people, God answers in several ways: yes, no, or wait.
Yeah.
How do you help people with the waiting and the no? Let's focus on the waiting.
Yeah.
Because the waiting can mean I want this for you, but I'm doing some things in that scenario, or I'm doing some things inside of you. But just be content, because I know the plans I have for you.
It's going to sound redundant, and I'm okay with it sounding redundant. It's a process of learning to trust God so that he can trust you with what's next. Submitting to the process. Learn to give up control, because a lot of times we want to control everything, and surrender is about saying, hands up, I give up, God, you got it. Taking your hands off of it and just learning to trust God, learning to bask in his presence, to spend time in his presence, to sit at his feet, to hear his voice in just every day, walking and birds singing, seeing a breeze blow through trees. I can scroll past something on Facebook and see God's voice, and it might not even been a spiritual thing, but he can speak if we listen, if we're willing to listen and to hear his voice. Waiting is not a bad thing.
Noise can be a tool of the enemy.
Yeah.
Because we're so busy with busyness and noise that we have this microwave on a relationship with God. I'm just going to take it and run with it.
Yeah. But God's voice is so strong even in the midst of noise, because sometimes life is noise. Sometimes you could be, what if you're a single mother, or you could be married with children and have a family and career and ministry? There's going to be noise. And I think as Christians, we have to learn how to hear God's voice in the midst of noise.
That's good.
And we have to know when it's time to get away from the noise so that we can hear God and gain clarity or gain vision for the next chapter of what life is going to look like. But I just know God's voice, if we're willing to hear it, whether we're in the loudest place or we're in the quietest place. If our heart is the heart of flesh, we can hear God's voice speaking to us in the midst of our mess, in our junk, sin, in the midst of trying to do what he wants you to do. If you have a willing ear to just hear God's voice, you can hear it.
You seem so resolute where you are now, and you give the inference you give the inference of peace. Is that because of your upbringing, or your upbringing and your journey?
I think it's a combination of my upbringing. It's a combination of my journey and my relationship with God, and my ability to take a step back. So this has given me an opportunity to take a step back and just look at life, and to look at everything I've gone through, to process trauma, to process success and victory, to process relationships, why they succeeded, why they failed. Taking this time away has allowed me to just almost step outside of myself and see myself, and get back inside myself and engage in the things that I needed to do to heal. So some of that was just live, exercise, spend time with your family, spend time with your friends. I have a counselor that I see gladly. First we started once a week. Now we're like once every other week. But that has helped foster healing in my thinking
I
and
don't want to skate.
addressing trauma.
I don't want to skate over that or run over that, because I think a certain community, they look at that and look down on that. But I think God gave us counselors, as He did give us doctors and preachers.
Yeah.
You know, with that gift, with that patient, it is a gift. And so, what would you tell those that are watching? They really have been told and looked upon that if you seek counseling from a profession, a professional, they scorn upon. How would you encourage them?
I would just tell you, for me personally, that was one of the most profound actions that I have taken, or most powerful actions that I have taken since I stepped away. I actually started it before I stepped away, and it has helped me in my grieving process and the loss of my dad, and the loss of or giving up of my career. It has helped me to process life traumas that I had tucked under the rug and not thought about. It has helped me to come to a place of peace, to put away shame. It's a powerful experience, and it's one that you control. My counselor simply tells me she is there to help me navigate my own healing journey. She's not there to make it happen. She just helps facilitate my frame of thinking so I can accomplish the goals that I came into counseling with. And so I would say to you, don't knock it until you've tried it. Find you a great counselor and unpack those things so you can be the best version of yourself. I wouldn't trade it for anything.
I have learned, even of myself, that if you don't unpack those things, if you don't get rid of those things, then those things will affect you and or affect you in relationships.
Absolutely.
That you bring baggage into relationships that could otherwise thrive and succeed, but because of unpacked baggage, that those skeletons and those spirits are constantly deflating and interrupting and haunting any possibility of success.
It distorts your view of your God-given identity. And
That's
until
good.
you can get
That's good.
a glimpse in a revelation and start to process your God-given identity and who God says you are, you wonder. And for me, this has allowed me to, even in the stepping away, now I understand God saying, I needed you to know that your identity wasn't rooted in the title of COO or SWA, or in that position at UConn, or being on the board of directors. Your identity wasn't rooted in it. Your identity wasn't rooted in the amount of money that you made. I needed you to step away so you can recognize you're still who I say you are, without that title, without that money, without a job, without even knowing what's next. Because people are like, what are you going to do next? What God says.
And you're okay with that.
Yeah, I have a heart. Like, I think I would like being a chief of staff for a president, or being in executive leadership for nonprofit. But whatever God says next is what's going to be next.
And that's not
I'm
superficial.
Okay.
And that's not superficial.
Yeah,
that's not being shallow.
Okay not knowing, because God knows. Like, I haven't missed a step over the last year and months. So I'm okay. It's freeing, like, to not know, to not worry about, to not try to control everything. Just get up and I trust God every day. The doors that He wants to
open. And that's not being flippant. That's not being flippant.
It's not at all flippant. It's being authentic and being genuine and being free and being at peace with yourself and loving yourself. I'm God's beautiful daughter. I know I'm going to make someone a great wife. I'm a servant leader, and I'm a change agent. That's who God said I am. That's my identity. And so this time has just allowed me to just reaffirm all of those things,
to
and
recalibrate.
To prepare. God, I believe in purpose, and I believe in platforms.
Mm-hmm.
College athletics was my platform for 20 years. My purpose is to do the things that God has called me to do. My platform was the place that He gave me to carry out the purpose and the call. So even though my platform has changed, it won't change my gifts. It won't change my purpose. God is just shifting my purpose into another platform to carry it out. And when he gives that platform, I will gladly take it.
This is what I've said. I said, God doesn't mind you having stuff. He don't want stuff having you.
Yeah.
Because if you're so concerned to hold on to the stuff, then you really may miss the opportunity for God to shift you to a greater opportunity.
Absolutely.
Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. More of my guest, Dr. Adrian Sweeney on Defining Moments. I've had a couple of people text me saying, "Will she come back? Will you come back?" This may be, I'm just kidding. I was gonna say this may be your next move, being my co-host.
Sure.
Okay. How refreshing, how therapeutic, how healing. I know that you've helped people because people sometimes can look at life as mundane, and I just get up and I struggle through and I'm chasing the rabbit. They're so worn out and busy. I saw something on Facebook a couple of days ago said, don't be so busy trying to make a living that you miss appreciating life.
Life, yes. There's a difference between, I like to call it life and existence. And a lot of people exist. But God is life. So in order to truly live, you need God. You need to embrace who God is and why he created you and what he wants to do in your life.
All right. I'm going to get on record so you can see me. I'm going to get on record and you can see her. Will you come back?
I will come back.
This has been so therapeutic for those that are struggling. Sometimes we hold on to something so tight. We hold on to something because we're afraid that if we let go, then somehow what we will move into will be less than what we have.
I can just tell you that one of the most freeing things I have ever experienced is letting go. I can remember being in college having a devotion, and the devotion was by Joyce Myers, and the title was Let Go and Let God. That was in college. It took me until 43. I'm 44 now, but I was 43 when I stepped away to truly understand what the process of letting go and letting God looks like. And I did say process because it's not a moment. It's a process to continue to conscientiously take your hands off of things and allow God to be God. Let God God. You do you because he created you to be and to do you and understand the separation of identity that you are not what you do. You are who you are. You are who God created you to be. It's not your verbs and your doing. It's your adjectives. The things that God
that's
says.
powerful. Repeat that again. Repeat that again.
It's not your verbs. It's not your doing. It's not what you did. It's not your job. It's who you are. It's the things that describe you, like the character of God, the things that you reflect in this earth that are beautiful and impactful. Like that's who you are. It's not what you did or you do.
Yeah. And I think sometimes we put our whole stake in life on, I got to do something.
Yeah.
I've got to do this.
Be something.
You can't, and sometimes the enemy wears us out. We're plagued with hypertension. We're plagued with diabetes. We're plagued with anxiety. We're plagued with depression. We're plagued with sleep apnea. We're plagued with all kinds of stuff. And a lot of the things we're plagued with, that they're self-inflicted.
Yeah.
Because we're so busy trying to do.
Yeah.
And you're finding out it's liberating being.
To just be who God created you to be, and you can't possibly know that if you don't spend time with him and be willing to hear his voice and to follow his steps.
So for those that in the remaining seconds that we have, how would you look at those and encourage them to embrace their purpose and be the best that they can be?
Yeah, I would say one of the most courageous things that you can do is to learn to prioritize in life. And for me, that has been choosing God, choosing myself, and choosing others in that order. Sometimes we put others before ourselves, but the scripture says, love the Lord your God with all your heart and your soul. Love your neighbor yourself. So learn to love yourself first. It's as a response to God's love for you.
That's good.
And I think in that prioritization, as you go through your day-to-day life, just consciously think, how can I choose God today? How can I choose myself today? How can I choose others today? Choose purpose today? And just knowing that choosing is loving, a conscious decision to decide, I love God, I love myself, I'm going to love others. If you follow that motto, I think you're going to find purpose. And
So my
embrace it.
question then becomes, but you don't know, Adrian, because I got to put this fire out, and this fire is raging, this fire is raging.
When the fire is raging, and
I
you're
didn't hear
not,
what you say.
You cut out the radio early, but we're still live streaming.
if you're not a firefighter, then you have to give the fire to the one who can't put out, and that's God. You have to ask him, and let people. You have to be willing to trust him. You have to be willing to be authentic with him. You have to be willing to understand that it's going to be okay. It's okay to say that I'm not okay. It's okay to go to God and say, I'm angry, I'm frustrated, I feel like giving up. Help me is a prayer. Like those two words, that's a valid, sincere, fervent prayer. And the fervent prayers of the righteous avail much.
And you know what? And you know what? Sometimes we miss the opportunity to receive help because we don't ask. Two things that I have found, I'll conclude this. Two things I found. People are too prideful to say, I messed up. I apologize. I'm sorry. And number two is help me.
Yeah. And sometimes religion taught us that.
Mm.
Religion taught us to pretend like everything was okay or that we had to be perfect.
Yeah.
When in actuality, our walk with Christ is a walk and a journey of progress. So progress suggests that you're not there yet, but you're getting there.
It takes time.
And you have to be able to love yourself with the things that you have gotten there on, and you have to be able to love yourself with the things that you haven't gotten there on, but be real enough with yourself to say, God, I know this isn't pleasing to you. God, I struggle with this. I need your help with this.
Yeah.
And he will help you progress.
Yeah.
So it's sometimes it's our own religious
Behavior.
demons and behaviors that we have to break down and come out of, to just have real relationship with Christ, not religion, but real relationship that helps us to progress and to grow and to become all that God destined and ordained us to be, to have a positive impact in this world. Because the reality is, yes, I'm Dr. Adrian Sweeney, but God is no respecter of person. So the very purpose, the very plan, the very power and glory that he gets out of and manifests in my life, he has an awesome plan for you and for your life and for your children and your household and your city and state. And so just allow God to use you and to grow you and to every day progress and make the world around you, because that's certainly why I wake up every morning.
Well, Dr. Adrian Sweeney has been our guest today on Defining Moment. This has been one of the most therapeutic, one of the most freeing, one of the most encouraging programs. All of my guests, I thank God for them, but I thank God for you saying yes. I now know why, because there are those that are watching and listening. You have been freed, you have been encouraged, you have been liberated. Join me next week as we bring to you another Defining Moment episode. We'll see you next week. God bless you.